If your 5-year-old self suddenly found themselves inhabiting your current body, what would your 5-year-old self do first?
Lose weight.
Oh,
Damn, how'd you get so big?
So
I'm thinking. There you go, right? Or would you rather?
Yes.
Here's one for fun. Would you rather your shirts be always 2 sizes too big or 1 size too small?
1 size too small.
Yeah,
and I would say, sorry to cut you off, but I think of like the team for Bowtime Media. If y'all aren't shooting tutorial videos of yourself and giving to your team, then you're not saving time. So like,
there you go.
And I spent overtime hours just trying to crank out some how-tos and, give the things away that you don't need to do, because there are things that you definitely need to do. And if you're like me and you only have 15, 20 hours a week to put into it, then it needs to be split to times that are more valuable. And make the videos. And I mean, my team loves it. I've got this one girl, she's killing it as admin, and she's doing all social media, and she's taking care of emails with some clients, and she just goes through these little training videos. And sometimes she watches it weekly because she doesn't remember the steps, and that's okay.
She can, because it's there and it's available.
Exactly. She's getting trained every week. So.
Right.
I would say too, secondly, now that I'm just thinking about it, it's important to spend, if you do have team members or, like me, I've brought on several part-time employees, and a couple of them are working every week, and spend time with them, invest in them. When I do oversight meetings, and sometimes weekly or every other week, that, we're half an hour and an hour on a video call, and like, man, that's a whole hour of your week from the time that you have. I'm like, yeah, but they're the ones that are going to help carry your name and the business and what you've built. And I don't know. And I guess that's part of me too. Like, just investing in them, like we work on goals and things that have nothing to do with the business. And I care more about their life than what they're doing task on the list for Bowtime Media.
Since you mentioned it, I did want to ask you a question about that. So you had this life altering this mass on your kidney, and you've got this health, I don't just want to call it a scare, but emergency. I mean, this crisis. How did that, you said it was subsequent to that you and your wife came together and said, we need to go for this. How did that event play into your decision? Did it in any way? I'm curious.
No, it definitely did. As I sat there in the hospital, going, okay, why me? What caused this? And why am I going through this? I was ready to jump in, God, and I think it was a time to help me have greater reflection on my career, greater reflection on how God really would want to use me. Yeah. And a lot of times before we move forward, we got to look back. Reflection's a great, it's a necessary time, I think, in our own growth, personal growth, that we need to take time to reflect back. It allowed me to do that. And it allowed me to really, during this whole time, never, having to trust God completely through this process. Yeah. Only to walk out, like I said, with, still with my kidney and cancer free. The doctors were baffled. They're going, this doesn't happen. You had less than 0.5% chance of that ever happening, and we don't see it. Wow. But it allowed us to really look at that and really, what's important in our family, what's important for our family, what's important for me, and how can I be used in a greater way, and use my talents and skills rather than designing a bunch of new buildings and apartments and homes. How can I use that skill set and impact people's lives and bring value to them?
That's great. That is so good, because I think anybody out there that's a small business owner, operator, maybe you've gone through a challenging time or you're in a challenging time, and you hear what Art is saying and take the lesson that Art took out of that is take time to reflect. Has personal development or continued learning been a part of your small business ownership journey?
Right. So every time I do an employee review, because that's all conscious information. I already know what I'm thinking about that particular person. So delivering that information and motivating them to make a change is a good portion of that review, or not make a change and proceed on exactly as they're doing, hopefully. But more importantly is I insist that they give me feedback on what I need to do for them individually as a boss.
Very cool.
And that way the learning and the growing doesn't ever stop, because each employee is different. Each employee, the love languages, even can play a little bit of a part in it. And
Absolutely.
what that particular person needs to feel valued, to feel important. So if I'm not doing enough of this or enough of that, then I want to know that.
Yeah.
And it also, it builds a lot of trust, because a lot of times people come at these things from a position of power, and especially young people. And I was probably guilty of it, years ago.
No, not you, Lee.
Yeah, no, not me, right? But the best thing you can do in that position is empower the people around you, and I believe that firmly.
That's great.
And to foster their strengths and go that direction.
So you would say personal growth has been a major part of your entrepreneurial journey then?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember who said this to me. I think it was Arlen Sorensen, but he said a CEO has to be in his mind where the company is going to be in 2 years.
Wow. Wow, that's good.
What that means is your reading has to be 2 years ahead of where you're going. If your company is going to have 5 more people in it in 2 years, you have to be the person today that leads those 5 people that aren't here yet. But you also have to be the person today who's absorbed the management levels that have to exist, and the new teams that are going to have to be there, and what education pieces are going to have to be there to build the leadership plan to develop your business plan.
This is kind of, I don't know if this is even a fair question, but where do you think you would be? I mean, you just lined out a waterfall of information on classes you went through, trainings you went through over the last 20 years. Let's just start.
Over the last 8.
Well, so that's just over the last 8. What you were mentioning there. Do you think you would have the same kind of success if you hadn't dug in and decided to be a learner and kind of humble yourself, like you said, and say, I might not know everything. I need to figure this out.
I've always been a learner. That's kind of that's probably the thing I do best that I do. I learn things and then can teach them to other people and pass them on. But I think it was the gifts that other people gave me that the learner isn't the real Magna Carta in those situations.
Okay.
The great people that are talking to you and the great wisdom that you're getting, you can learn bad things, Yeah.
The
idea is to find the geniuses and surround yourself.